Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on July 17, 2023. This meeting included comments and discussion about a plan to transfer over $1 million from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission into the city's general fund for other initiatives, removal of zoning conditions and a new site plan for the Beekman on Broadway development at Broadway and Maiden Lane, and a rezoning to increase housing density at Newport Road, Bird Road, and Victoria Circle. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on July 17, 2023. All items were approved unanimously. Councilmember Aisha Ghazi Edwin was absent. This is her third absence since taking office 8 months ago. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at a2council.com. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. After introductory remarks, public comments, and staff explanations, Council discussed agenda items for about 25 minutes. In Council comments, Mayor Taylor spoke about a 5-day trip organized by the city to Tubingen, Germany. Earlier this month, 9 people, including Mayor Taylor, his wife, Council members Radina and Dish, 4 city staffers, and the director of a local nonprofit, Community Action Network, flew to Germany to discuss climate action strategies.
While we were in Tubingen, saw so much and learned so much. And, I think, the staff and council members' service will be the better for it.
8 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 3 of them spoke to topics on the agenda. 2 commenters, including former councilmember Ali Ramlawi, spoke to an agenda item that was removed prior to the meeting. Item CA9 would have approved the transfer of $6.2 million from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission to the city's general fund in order to purchase the property at 350 South 5th. This property is across from the downtown public library and is sometimes referred to as the Y Lot.
As a part of council of 2018 through 2022, I co-sponsored the millage for affordable housing. I also co-sponsored the resolutions to transfer the city-owned property to the Housing Commission for a nominal fee of, I think, $1 to build affordable housing. As we all know, this site has a long history of affordable housing. Affordable housing was there before things were torn down and left vacant. So it was alarming for me to see that council had thought of essentially reneging on prior commitments.
We did pass an affordable housing millage, and we do have certain expectations, and one of those was the development of affordable housing on that site at the old Y Lot. It was identified that that's just an ideal location for affordable housing, right downtown, right next to the Blake Transit Center. And if you recall, there was talk about not even putting any affordable housing units there and just having a payment in lieu for non-affordable housing development. That gladly, fortunately, went by the wayside.
In 2019, a consultant led public engagement around use of the Y Lot and recommended that a minimum of 100 affordable units should be built on site. The consultant's report outlined financial arrangements using federal and state resources and the expectation that a portion of the project's financial revenue go to the city to fill any funding gaps. The city paid $5.2 million for the property in 2018 and signed a debt service agreement with a 16-year repayment schedule. In agenda item CA9, the Ann Arbor Housing Commission would buy the property from the city for $6.2 million and pay off the debt. Ahead of the meeting, one council member asked for explanation of the money transfer, why the Ann Arbor Housing Commission was being asked to pay $1 million more than the city originally paid for it, more than what was needed to pay off the associated debt. Staff explained that the city had other initiatives planned for the proceeds. Days before the meeting, another council member confirmed that this was a question of using affordable housing funds for other purposes. There was no opportunity for public discussion of these concerns. Instead, CA9 was removed from the agenda before the meeting. After the removal of CA9 and one other item, the consent agenda included expenditures of over $2.7 million. One item was pulled for discussion. CA7 directs an additional $400,000 to Ann Arbor Spark, a nonprofit economic development organization committed to growing the Ann Arbor region's economy. Councilmember Cornell, who previously worked for Spark, explained to CA7.
And so the 2 initiatives that Spark is looking to implement with that funding is a DEI initiative, which would work to support and directly encourage entrepreneurial growth within BIPOC and minority communities. And the second half of that $400,000 increase would go to support innovation and entrepreneurship around circular economy initiatives.
This month alone, City Council has allocated $350,000 toward promoting recycling, reuse, and donation. At their last meeting on July 6th, Council approved a $150,000 contract with a consultant to promote the circular economy. The consent agenda, including the $400,000 allocation to Spark, was approved unanimously. Council considered an amendment to zoning conditions and a new site plan for a building at the Beekman on Broadway development. Current zoning conditions for this development include the requirement that buildings conform to a previously approved site plan. The original site plan proposed to build 80 condos for home ownership. A new site plan includes 196 rental units. Parking has been removed and a second swimming pool added. The least expensive rental units at this development cost around $2,000 for a 434 square foot micro studio apartment. Residents offered comments during public hearings on both the zoning change and the new site plan.
And we all know that the paltry requirements the developers are often forced to make by having a small percentage of lower rent units is just that, paltry.
Council has a choice. You can vote yes on the rezoning and likely add to Morningside's profits, or you can vote no on the rezoning, thereby giving the developer the opportunity to propose something better that is more in line with Ann Arbor's clearly stated goals of making our city more sustainable, more affordable, and more walkable.
We need housing, but the people living in that housing need stores to buy groceries and other retail as well. The developer has already gotten rid of most of the retail in this location. Hold him to his promises to make this mixed use. Please vote no.
The 800-pound gorilla in this room is the university. It's why most of us live here. It's why this city exists. Everything we worry about in terms of affordability and price points of housing is being driven by that fact, first and foremost.
If you get rid of the conditions on the zoning, you get rid of the discretion you have to ask this developer to build more sustainably, to include more affordable housing, to include more retail instead of a pool, for example. It then becomes more of a by right as a condition on the height limit. And the developer can build whatever he wants to build.
Yeah, I would like to see more offers by the developer to include, more electrification. I think that would be a great idea. We really need the housing, so please support this.
Fighting over every single site like this will never get us to where we need to be to resolve this housing crisis. We need to allow a lot more development by right.
The city simply doesn't have the power to magic up more demand for retail in this space.
People can only look for housing that's here. And so we should have housing here for those people to look at and consider moving into.
Whatever these, I don't really frankly care about developer rights. That's not an important part of this dynamic. I don't know how that works exactly, but my appeal to you all in this city council meeting is if you are to choose to make such an approval or decline, really think about whether this is actually impacting the people who actually need it most.
And this shouldn't be called mixed use just because there's 1% of retail in it. And we had asked for a mixed use development here. So please give us what we want.
Council discussed the removal of zoning conditions and the new site plan for about 20 minutes.
This phase of the project will have electric dryers, and the developer has said he is investigating electric stoves. And really a great benefit of this project is that it provides one protected bike space per unit, which is well beyond what our code requires.
Councilmember Song suggested that only certain types of businesses can afford to occupy retail space in the city.
There are reasons why we see new businesses coming in like Taco Bell, Dunkin' Donuts, Chick-fil-A coming in. It's because they're financed to come in and they have the funds to do this. And the financial burden is on the developer themselves.
The removal of these zoning conditions is not the first special request from the property developer of Beekman on Broadway. The parcel was previously zoned for a planned unit development, which required significantly more retail space to serve the surrounding neighborhood. In 2017, the current owner requested zoning changes to construct a very different project. At the time, current councilmember Briggs served on the Planning Commission. When the developer's request was granted, she was the lone vote of dissent. MLive reported at the time that Briggs did not believe it was appropriate to rezone the property without more robust public process. She also believed it didn't meet city land use recommendations for a PUD and village center. This week, Councilmember Briggs explained,
So in terms of this particular project, I'm supportive of the zoning changes. I will say for the residents that move into this location, they are in a 15-minute neighborhood. They are, as Councilmember Dish spoke to, a 15-minute walk from Carytown. There are amenities nearby.
Other council members weighed in.
I don't really see this as an opportunity to try to get all of our hopes and dreams and start tacking on more things that we would like, because it's not even codified in the zoning group and it was never part of the discussion for the zoning with conditions.
The bottom line is that we have a housing crisis in the city of Ann Arbor, and that housing prices are too high. They're too high because of, simply put, supply and demand.
Council voted unanimously to remove the conditional zoning for Beekman on Broadway, and voted unanimously again to approve a site plan that adds 119 housing units, eliminates parking, and adds a second swimming pool. Council considered the rezoning of 11 parcels recently annexed into the city. Parcels on Newport, Bird Road, and Victoria Circle will be rezoned R1D for single-family dwellings. A public commenter spoke to the issue earlier in the evening.
The fact that as a city we're still preventing people from building duplexes on their own property really saddens me. It's an indicator that, as a city, we still aren't taking seriously the goal of allowing anyone, not just the wealthy, to live here.
The area at Newport Road, Bird Road, and Victoria Circle are heavily wooded lots on the northern edge of town within the Huron River watershed. City staff recommended zoning of R1A, consistent with the surrounding area. Mayoral appointees on the city's planning commission recommended zoning of R1D, with reduced lot sizes and setback requirements. Councilmember Dish reported that the Planning Commission considered zoning the parcels for multifamily development, but decided not to.
And we came to the conclusion that you don't want to fight a 4-alarm fire with a garden hose, and so rezoning 11 parcels isn't really a good strategy. And we are about to have a comp plan, and we can talk systematically about what we want to do with single-family zoning. Going to R4C, for example, would require different utility specifications, fire hydrant requirements, and other things. So the infrastructure in that area is not in place for that.
The R1D zoning for properties at Newport Road, Bird Road, and Victoria Circle was approved unanimously at first reading. This zoning will be voted on for final approval at a future meeting, after a public hearing. After a brief introduction, Council unanimously approved at first reading an ordinance amendment removing the requirement that one member of the Transportation Commission own or operate a transportation business in Ann Arbor. This amendment will be voted on for final approval at a future meeting after a public hearing. Finally, Council unanimously approved, without discussion, the recognition of Garrett's Space as a local civic nonprofit for the purpose of getting a charitable gaming license and conducting a raffle next month. The meeting adjourned at 8:46 p.m. without any additional public comment. For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com.
Welcome to this week's A2Council Moment of Zen.
And perhaps retail will come later on. I feel bad about mentioning donuts. Perhaps that was unseemly. Refugee donuts are actually very delicious. So sorry about, I'm not on planning. I am clearly not on planning commission.